Help, I can't hit record. If you've ever said that or felt that way about your podcast episode, then this episode is for you. This has been my story all day today. Today on my calendar has been, the theme for today is content creation. So all day today, the priority was to create content for my business, podcast episodes, reels, you name it, blogs, repurposing this podcast into various forms of content for different channels. And up until a few minutes ago, I've been unable to hit the record button. Maybe not unable, but I mean, if you've struggled with this, you get my gist. It's just not happening. You just were unable to hit the record button. So if that is you, today's episode is for you. And what I want you to take away from today is to feel empowered and to be able to just go hit the record button after you're done with this. Maybe not right after this episode, but feel better and have some tools in your tool belt to help you navigate that next time it pops up. Because it's going to pop up again for me, and it's surely going to pop up again for you, okay? So as we're getting into this, I want you to know that practice makes perfect. I'm sure you've heard that before, but I want to share this quote from Harry Truman, and it says, "Imperfect action is better than perfect inaction." One more time, that's imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. This came up, I am in a business group, like a mastermind group, I guess you could say, or an entrepreneur group with my business coach. And it came up in a call, either this last week or the week before, this idea. I shared that I was struggling to move things forward and that I was struggling because I wanted them to be perfect. We're going to talk about this more later in the episode, but basically, I struggle with perfectionism. And if you're struggling with perfectionism and that's a reason that you're not able to hit the record button, this quote, my business coach said something to the effect, I'm not sure if this is the exact quote, but basically, action in the direction that you're trying to go is so much better, even if it's sloppy or not exactly the way you want it to be, but you're still moving and making effort towards the goal you're working towards. It's so much better. So that's where I'm going to start it off with you. Let's dive into this episode and let's talk about how to hit the record button. Okay, so if you're struggling to hit the record button, where we want to start is we want to understand why we're struggling to hit the record button. So leading up to this and me hitting the record button right here for this episode, I went through 3 different outlines of what I wanted to talk about today. And I've tried breaking this project up. I wrote 2 of these outlines last week, days ahead of when I was going to hit the record button or hit the record. And just for whatever reason, I know exactly why, but I still couldn't hit the record button on the first one. Let me walk you through that. The first outline that I did was on a topic that I'd had on my outline when I created the season a couple months ago. And so I started to create that outline and work through it. And as I was doing that, I got totally sidetracked on this light bulb moment of like, this would make this episode so much better. And so I went and started researching that and went on this 2-hour tangent and got totally sidetracked and got off track. I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I get time blindness. And if I dive into a project, I might just totally lose track of time and be totally off track for my calendar for time blocking. So that's what happened. And so I had to switch it up. I came back later and wasn't feeling exactly great about that topic or the direction it was heading. And I had something else in mind. And I was like, if we nuance it a little bit and shift it this way, I think that'll work out better. So I wrote a second outline and it turned out okay. And so today when I sat down finally, after really struggling to even sit down to hit the record button, I pulled up that outline to read through it and kind of make sure I had everything the way I wanted to say it and have bullet points so that I knew that I wasn't going to miss anything that I wanted. And I poured over it maybe 2 or 3 times, and I just kept allowing myself to be distracted by something else. And so I finally got to the point where I was exasperated and I just wanted to hit the record button and I couldn't do it. And I was like, man, I need help. I can't hit the record button. And I was like, that's it. That's what I've got to record about today. So then I ended up writing a third outline, and that's what we're recording now, is the third outline. So if you're struggling to hit the record button, I want you to stop at the beginning and ask yourself, why am I struggling to hit the record button today? For me, the struggle comes from perfectionism. That first episode outline that I wrote out would have been good. It would have been a fine episode. But where I got derailed is I got this harebrained idea of this other topic that I needed to do a lot of research on that I hadn't allocated time for, where the episode would have turned out okay without that. But if I wanted to do that kind of research for it, I need to put that in a future episode when I've allotted more time for it, not allow it to derail the rest of my day. So that perfectionism threw that whole first outline and lost all the steam for that first one. Same thing for the second episode outline that I made. Once I got to it today and I was reading through it, the story that I wanted to tell and what I wanted to convey, I wanted to get it perfect. I wanted to get it really good. And so I allowed myself to get derailed again by perfectionism and continued to kick the ball or kick the problem further down the day until now it's in the evening and it's running into other plans. And so it's frustrating. It could be another thing is that it's an avoidance for you of something. It's something that's difficult for you, and so you're avoiding it. Getting on here and talking isn't necessarily easy for me all the time, especially if it's an area where I feel like I want to make it perfect or really good. And so I would say that today I was avoiding something that I was a little uncomfortable with, and I pushed the problem off further down the road. So, or maybe it's that you're feeling overwhelmed. If that's the case, break it up, break it into like I did with this. It didn't necessarily work for me. I need to nuance my workflow a little bit more. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, what you can do with your podcast episode is write your title one day. The next day, write, your intro or your hook and what you want to do there. And then the next day, write maybe the body of your podcast and what you want to talk about, the 3 points or 5 points or whatever you're going to put in there content-wise. Just break it up so that it's manageable and that it's easy for you if that's what's holding you back from hitting the record button. Or maybe it's that, recording the whole thing all in one go is a struggle. And if you're an audio-only podcast, this is really easy. You can record it soundbite by soundbite and then string it together in your editing process. That's going to take a lot more work, but it's definitely something you can do if you're struggling to hit the record button because you want to get all your words perfect. Maybe I just gave the perfectionist a bad out, maybe. But the first thing you want to do is figure out why you're avoiding hitting the record button and then attack that problem head on so that you can not struggle with it anymore. It sounds really simple and maybe too simple, but I think at the end of the day, it really is that simple. With a second point I wanted to make in how to overcome hitting your record button is hold yourself accountable with deadlines and with your community. I could have reached out to some colleagues today and said, hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish and would love if you could hold me accountable to that. If you've got friends and colleagues that you can do that with, that's fantastic. That's a great way to do it. If you don't, man, come join my free podcasting Facebook group, and I would be happy to hold you accountable. And I would love for you to hold me accountable because we're in this journey together. That's part of the thing. Like, I'm passing back my information and my experiences to you, but at the same time, I'm building my podcast, you're building your podcast, and so let me support you. So if that's something you're interested in, head over to the Facebook, join the group, and let me know you're struggling, and let's message back and forth there, and I would love to hold you accountable. But if you can find a way to hold your feet to the fire, maybe it's turning the internet off to your computer. For me, that would have been a great move today. I didn't stop to think about why am I struggling to hit record. I didn't stop to think, this is going to impact my day later today. I've got other plans for the evening, but now since I've kicked this so far down the road for myself, I've got to forego those plans to make sure that this meets the deadline for tomorrow. And that's one of the things that I've got to work on is creating a deadline, maybe like Friday, the week before the podcast comes out, where the episode has to be done by then so that I'm not wrecking my Monday night plans to make sure that this podcast is getting out Tuesday morning. And I'm sure that you can relate to that. I think any podcaster who's been podcasting for any number of time can relate to that, where you just let it come down to the last minute. And so that's something that I've learned going through this a few times, admittedly, is that I need to put in some deadlines when this is due, just like I would for a client, because I'm not going to do this for a client's work. I'm going to get it done, and I'm going to get it done in a timely manner and turn it into them and give it to them so that they can deliver it where they need it delivered. So why wouldn't I do that and take that same kind of accountability, same kind of tenacity for my own work so that I can have a better work-life balance for myself? Well, the secret is we don't respect ourselves as that much sometimes. So that's an area that I need to grow in, is learning to respect myself in that way. So if I'd have thought about it, I could have held my feet to the fire today by throwing my phone out of the room, locking it up so that there was no way I could be distracted by that. I would have turned my internet off so that I couldn't get on email or find some other distraction that is productive in my business, which arguably it probably was. But today, what I had blocked out was this. Throw out those other distractions, hold your feet to the fire. It's uncomfortable, but honestly, nothing good grows in comfort, really. So hold your feet to the fire, be uncomfortable, push through, and head towards where you want to be going. So, and like I'd said before, this is my third outline for this episode. And I think another thing that was holding me back today was hunting for the perfect topic. And we've kind of already gone over that with perfectionism. Just push ahead. Just go ahead with your topic. Really just dive in with what you've got. Because the quote that we had up above, imperfect action is always better than perfect inaction. At the end of the day, we are working on our craft. And the best way to get that work done is by putting in the reps. And so when we put in our reps, doesn't matter if they're great, we want to try to have as good a form as we can, obviously. But at the end of the day, what counts is whether I went in and I put in my reps. And for us right now as podcasters, for me and you, that means sitting down here behind our microphone and hitting the record button. And honestly, if right now all you can do is hit the record button and record 2 or 3 minutes and stumble through that and you publish that, man, congratulations. I want to applaud you. I want to encourage you to do that because you're working on your craft. You're showing up. It's imperfect, but you're moving in the direction you want to go. So that's really where I want to land with for us in this conversation today is, number one, stop and ask yourself, what is holding me back? Why am I struggling to hit record today? And really just attack that problem head on. Find ways around it. If you need somebody to be accountable to, come join me in my Facebook group. It's free. I'm not trying to sell you anything there, just trying to build a community of podcasters who are on this journey together, who are building our podcasts and who are sharing our wholesome content with those around us so that we can bless and empower everybody around us. I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling through this with you. It's all right. Just keep going. And I want to share that too, because in one of those moments when I was trying to avoid hitting the record button, I did end up on YouTube and I watched a video from a content creator named Mary Spender. She's a musician, fantastic musician. And she's somebody that I have enjoyed following along her journey. And as a musician and a songwriter myself, it's somebody that's inspirational to me. And she was sharing kind of a vlog of her day. And it was of her editing a YouTube video. And it was just encouraging and inspiring to me to see that she got off track with her schedule and that her day didn't go as planned. And she was vulnerable enough to put it in there. So I want to be vulnerable with you to say that I'm struggling with this too, of hitting the record button. And it's okay if you are. We're on this journey together. All that to say, we're on this journey together and that you're doing great. Keep it up. So one last call to action. Come join the Facebook group. Let me help support you in hitting that record button. And until next week, happy podcasting.